The screen is dark. A panicked, crying voice tells his captors that he doesn't remember. A steely voice says to kill him. And then we cut to Jin-suk, waking up in the back seat of his family's car. He's covered in sweat and looks confused, but ultimately fine. His mother's there. She asks if he's alright. His dad laughs and tells him that he was having a nightmare. His brother, Yusuk, chuckles and thinks that Jin-suk was too excited about them moving into a new house today to sleep. Jin-suk smiles along, but something seems off. The family arrives at their new house, and Jin-suk says that he has a familiar feeling about it. But ultimately, he's excited for their move. He stands beside his older brother. And for a moment, Jin-suk pontificates on how much he admires him. Yusuk is not only smart, he's kind and caring and good at sports, but he never has anything bad to say about anyone. And he's the envy of all the other boys in school. Jin-suk thinks the world of his brother, and it's easy to see why. And even though the previous year saw Yusuk get into a car crash and injure his leg, he's still perfect in the eyes of his brother. As the family start to unpack, we see that the year is 1997. Upstairs, Jin-suk learns that he'll be sharing a room with his brother. Turns out that the house's previous owner left some things behind in the smallest room, but asked if he could come back in a month to collect them. Jin-suk's father said of course, which means that now there's only the one room for Jin-suk and his brother to share. Yusuk jokes that Jin-suk doesn't want to share a room with him, but Jin-suk says that he doesn't mind. He does love his brother after all. That night at dinner, Jin-suk asks his father about the spare room. His father tells him that it'll be cleaned out in a month. And for now the two brothers are going to have to be patient. He also warns Jin-suk not to go into the room no matter what. This catches Jin-suk's attention, and as he looks up to where the room is, he hears a thud on the floor. No one else heard it, but when he pushes them all, they guess that maybe it was just thunder. A few moments later, more thunder rumbles, confirming their theory, but Jin-suk doesn't look so sure. While having dinner, Jin-suk's parents remind him to continue taking his medication. Jin-suk nods and agrees. Jin-suk's in bed, listening to music in his Discman. Beside him, Yusuk is fast asleep. As he listens to the music, he hears a noise coming from the small room. Despite himself, Jin-suk has to go and investigate. He creeps closer, hearing a rustling sound beyond the door. The sound seems to increase. He reaches the door, slowly moves his hand for the handle when Yusuk taps him on the shoulder. Jin-suk just about jumps through the roof, but then hurriedly explains to his brother about the noise. His brother listens, hears nothing, and then drags Jin-suk outside for a walk to clear his head. It's pouring rain, so the two brothers take umbrellas. They stand outside and look over the city. Yusuk suddenly gets a call from their father, asking him to come back home for a moment. Yusuk agrees, but confirms that Jin-suk will wait for him. Jin-suk says he will. As Jin-suk waits, Yusuk is attacked outside the house by a group of men in a van. He gives chase but is unable to stop him. He does, however, memorize the number plate, then somehow stumbles back inside and tells his parents that Yusuk was kidnapped before passing out cold. While passed out, Jin-suk has more bizarre dreams. There's blood, an axe swinging at his head, rain, someone says kill him, and then he wakes up. When Jin-suk eventually wakes, he's taken downstairs to speak to the detectives. He tells them that he saw the men taking his brother. He then tells them about the license plate, the one on the black van that his brother was forced into. The detectives claim that this license plate doesn't exist, and neither does the van. Jin-suk becomes irate, insisting that he saw it, but neither of the two detectives believe him. They assume he imagined the numbers or misread them. The days become hard for Jin-suk and his parents. He tries to study and continues to take his medication, but he's anxious and scared for his brother. Every night, Jin-suk dreams of a man who he doesn't recognize, but one that keeps visiting him. One night, Jin-suk is fast asleep, only to wake suddenly. He looks across the room and sees that the door to the small room is open. What's more, someone inside the room is slowly pushing the door further and further open. He watches for a moment as the door opens, and then ducks under the covers, terrified of whoever's in the room. A dark figure approaches and walks inside the room. Jin-suk hides, terrified, waiting for the end. But when it doesn't come, he sneaks a peek and sees that his room is empty and the door was closed. Something, a demon woman of some kind, attacks Jin-suk. He screams and then wakes up. 19 days have passed, and Yusuk returns home. He claims to have amnesia, with zero recollection of what happened or where he's been for the past 19 days. A psychiatrist explains that this is normal, just a result of extreme trauma, and that the memories will return soon enough. All they can do is wait. Jin-suk wakes in the middle of the night to find his brother is gone. He hears him leaving through the front gate, but thinks nothing of it. He's relieved the next morning to wake and find him returned. Jin-suk goes to take his medication, only for him to drop it under the counter. When he bends down to retrieve it, Yoo-suk distracts him. They order takeaway food and eat together. As they eat, Jin-suk asks his brother where he went the previous night, and Yoo-suk claims he went nowhere, that Jin-suk was just having a dream. Yoo-suk then stands to go to class, and Jin-suk notices that he's limping on the wrong leg. Yoo-suk dismisses the claim, pretending that Jin-suk is seeing things. Jin-suk seems to believe him and goes back to eating. Jin-suk is fast at studying, until he isn't. He falls asleep at the desk, head on the table. Yoo-suk stands over his shoulders, watching his brother sleep. He then picks up a click-top pencil and starts to click the lead out further and further, aiming it toward his brother's closed eyelid. It gets within a millimeter of piercing the eye, before dropping out the end of the pen. When it does, Yoo-suk puts the pen down, and leaves the house. Jin-suk opens his eyes, having been awake the whole time. He sees Yoo-suk leave the house, so he follows him. Shocked when he notices that Yoo-suk is no longer limping, but things only get stranger from there. He follows Yoo-suk through the town, further and further until he comes to a quiet part of the city. There, the two detectives from earlier address him as boss, and the three of them speak as if they are scheming something together, something to do with Jin-suk. Confused, terrified, Jin-suk returns to leave when he bumps into the two detectives. They call him an asshole, and tell him that he's ruining everything, before suddenly chasing him. Jin-suk flees, and it looks like he's going to lose him, only for his brother to suddenly appear behind him, and put a cloth to his mouth, making him pass out. Jin-suk wakes the next morning to find himself back in his room, at the table where he passed out. He freaks out when Yoo-suk appears, and he rushes into the bathroom and locks himself in. There, he screams at Yoo-suk that he remembers what happened the previous night, and demands that Yoo-suk tell him the truth. Yoo-suk says that he's telling him the truth, and Jin-suk must have dreamt it. Jin-suk won't listen, and the two brothers start to fight violently. It only ends with Yoo-suk reminding Jin-suk that he didn't take his medication the previous day, and that's why the dreams were so vivid. Jin-suk looks confused, upset, angry at the whole thing, but he eventually relents, and believes what his brother is telling him. His brother sits Jin-suk down, and forces him to take his medication. He then leaves the house, with his brother gone. Jin-suk sits down to study, but then he finds the lead from the pencil that Yoo-suk pushed out the previous night, proving that Jin-suk wasn't imagining it. His mother returns, and Jin-suk tells her everything that happened. She looks terrified, wondering if something's wrong with Yoo-suk. Jin-suk says that whoever that man is, it isn't his brother. In his room, Jin-suk again hears a noise coming from the small room. He picks up a baseball bat and stalks toward it, and finally opens the door. Inside, everything appears normal. It's full of furniture, all packed up and ready to be collected. But then Jin-suk rounds the corner, and finds his brother hanging from the neck, dead. Jin-suk wakes up in bed. Again, it was all a dream. He wanders downstairs, where he hears his mother on the phone in her room. He sneaks to the door, and overhears the conversation. She's on the phone to Yoo-suk, telling him everything that Jin-suk told her earlier. It's clear that Jin-suk was correct, and something's going on. As he listens, he accidentally makes a noise, and his mother hears. She hurries to the door and throws it open, but Jin-suk's gone. His mother stalks the house, making sure that Jin-suk didn't overhear her. Jin-suk hides outside, but when he realizes that she's going upstairs to make sure he's asleep, he has to climb the side of the house and beat her to his room. It's raining outside, slippery, and the window's locked. Jin-suk hangs off the side of the house as he hurries to try and climb in. Meanwhile, his mother's getting closer and closer to his room. Somehow, he manages to get in before her, and she pulls back the covers to see her son asleep. He's soaking wet from the rain, but she mistakes it as sweat and leaves him to go back to sleep. The moment she's gone, Jin-suk is up. He climbs back out the window as a means to escape. Inside, his mother's still on the phone, explaining that her cover has been blown, that Jin-suk overheard her. Back outside, Jin-suk is about to flee from the house when his father appears. His mother then comes outside and a random man approaches and stands beside her. They ask Jin-suk to come back inside, but he runs for his life. The random man chases him through the street, and it looks like he's gonna catch Jin-suk too, only for a motorbike rider to get in the way, giving Jin-suk enough time to hail down a police car. Finally, he's saved. Inside the police station, Jin-suk tries to explain what's going on, but even he doesn't understand it. Things become stranger when they confirm his identity to be true, but then tell him it's 2017 and he is, in fact, 40 years old. Jin-suk freaks out and looks around the station to see that it's indeed true, and then he sees a mirror, his reflection for the first time. Jin-suk isn't the 20-year-old he thought he was, he's a middle-aged man. He goes home to find the place empty. He stalks upstairs to the spare room, and when he goes in, things become even stranger still. There's fake blood everywhere, as well as 2 dummies covered in blood, making the place look like a crime scene. Yoo-suk and his parents arrive. Jin-suk demands to know what's going on, and finally, they explain everything. 20 years ago, a murder took place in this house, in the small room. It was a brutal murder that captured the attention of the nation. Unfortunately, the police were never able to find out who the murderer was. After 16 years, the family hired Yoo-suk as a private investigator. He was able to track down Jin-suk, who he claims to be the murderer. The problem was that Jin-suk can't remember doing it. It's like the memories have been erased. In a desperate attempt to try and make Jin-suk remember, they brainwash him. The plan is to convince Jin-suk that it's 1997 and that he's moving into the murder house with his family, Yoo-suk and his 2 parents. The night they moved in, they intended on reenacting the murder, hoping that this would unlock the memory within Jin-suk. But that night, Yoo-suk was arrested for unrelated reasons and Jin-suk saw it. The plan had to change. As they drive Jin-suk to the police station, Yoo-suk tries a final time to get him to remember what he did and why. Jin-suk claims that he never killed anyone, and then, before they get a chance to push him further, he jumps out of the moving car and flees. They give chase, hurriedly trying to catch the fleeing Jin-suk as he runs through traffic. In the confusion, Yoo-suk crashes the car, killing the mother and father and injuring himself. It hit him and knocked him out. Now, finally, Jin-suk remembers everything. As a 20-year-old, he rides in the back of the car with his brother and parents. It's the same scene from the start of the movie, only this time, the car crashes and severely injures his brother and kills his parents. Alone now, Jin-suk is desperate for money. The surgery on his brother has to happen as soon as possible if there's any chance to save him. But the cost is too much for Jin-suk to afford. He tries to find a job, but he has no education and no one's willing to hire him. Then, one night while surfing the internet looking for a job, a random user asks if it's true that he'll do anything for the money he needs. Jin-suk says that he will, so the random user asks Jin-suk to kill a woman for him. The user was specific that only the woman be killed and that her kids be left alone. Jin-suk sneaks into her house, the very same one he's been living in, and finds the in her bedroom. But he's unable to do it and he's about to leave him be. When she wakes up and sees Jin-suk in her house, he asks her not to scream, tells her that he's going to leave, but then the daughter comes downstairs and starts to scream. In a panic, Jin-suk chases after her and accidentally kills her. The mother then comes in, still screaming, and he accidentally kills her too. The only person he doesn't kill is the infant son, who Jin-suk tells to go into his room and count from 1 to 110 times. If he does that, he'll bring his mother and sister back to him. The boy runs into his room to do just that, and Jin-suk leaves. It was Jin-suk's brother's doctor that hired him to kill his wife. Jin-suk confronts him on a roof, asks how he could have hired someone to do such a terrible thing. The doctor explains it was for the insurance money, as his family would be on the street without it. Jin-suk still can't believe he wanted such a thing, and soon the 2 men fight. It's a struggle, which ends when Jin-suk accidentally throws the doctor off the roof and kills him. Distraught, Jin-suk flees. It's present day, and Jin-suk wakes up in a hospital. His fake brother is there, furious that once again Jin-suk managed to escape. But not this time. He pulls out a needle filled with poison and is about to inject Jin-suk, when he finally admits that he remembers what happened. His fake brother reveals he was the little boy Jin-suk let live all those years ago, and that his life was ruined because of Jin-suk. Apparently his relatives took the money from the insurance and then shipped him off to an orphanage. He wants to know if his father hired Jin-suk to kill his mother, as that is what he's always suspected. But Jin-suk lies and tells him that he did it on his own. He then wants to know why Jin-suk didn't kill him too, why he let him live in such a horrible world. Distraught now, the fake brother commits suicide by throwing himself out the window. Jin-suk, unable to handle all the pain he's caused, uses the needle to commit suicide. A final flashback reveals that on the day Jin-suk's family was in that accident, he met the fake brother as a child, not knowing at the time the way he would affect his life forever. That's a wrap on our character's journey. Let me know what you think in the comments and drop your suggestions for the next movie we should chat about. Stay awesome and don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. See you on the flip side of movie magic.